Good afternoon. Let's call Prattville Planning Commission into order. Ms. Morgan, if you would you please call roll?
Mayor Gillespie. Here. Councilman Bowles. Here. Chairman Gardner.
Here.
Vice Chair McAuley. Here. Chief Johnson. Ms. Carpenter. Here. Mr. Hall. Here. Mr. Nelson. Here. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Ms. Morgan. Let it be known that we do have a quorum. Have everyone got a chance to read the minutes of May 16th?
I have, and I move they be approved.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. All in favor that the minutes be approved, let it be known by raising your right hand.
10-4.
Thank you. We have no old business at this time. We got new business here on the agenda. It's the final plat of the Oak of Buena Vista, plat number 3B. Cotton Blossom Way, owner of the old Buena Vista LLC, engineer Larry Speaks and Associates. Ms. Coyle, if you will, would you please read that resolution?
Resolution final plat, the Oaks of Buena Vista, number 3B, June 20, 2013. Whereas the Oaks of Buena Vista LLC is the owner of the Oaks of Buena Vista, number 3B, and whereas the proposed development is located inside the city limits off County Road 4, and whereas the sketch plan for the proposed development was approved January 5th, 2006, 2, the preliminary plat for the proposed development was approved March 15th, 2012, 3, the time extension for the proposed development was approved on March 21, 2013, and whereas the required city departments have reviewed and commented on the proposed final plat, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its favorable review of the final plat of the Oaks of Buena Vista plat number 3B. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gillespie. Mr. Gillen, you want to come up and tell us what you have for us?
This plat, we started on construction with this approximately a year ago. Very well, they've built out basically all the way through, I think, one or two lots left. Seed mulch down this week, and probably. A lot of problems with pads in this area. We had to dig material out, put sand in to get up above the groundwater tables, put good material in so they could build a house. And once that was excavated, we used material from these areas for this to fill these up. And in turn, we turned around and took the poor material that was unsuitable for building and put it back in these areas. And at this point, we've designated these areas on the plat as a non-buildable area. We don't want anybody building on it. We make sure it's exposed on the flats. And it is a concern, Joel. He'll probably have a little more to say about it. We talked about a few things about the building line. Since we squeezed it back a little bit, we could push the building lines up to 5 feet because we've got an extra 5 feet back. We pushed the building lines 5 foot forward. Again, keep in mind all this material here in the front and on these lots is good material. Our bad material problem for the building path was in this area right here. So we can move it back up so the building can move up a little bit farther, closer to the road, more or less to put it in a better condition for sure.
Is this R2 or R3?
R2. Huh?
5. Okay, so he's
Whoa.
okay with the setback.
45 foot. We had presented a 75, and Joel suggested a 20, and Mr. Parker didn't have a problem.
Greg, when you say non-buildable material, has it been tested, or do you know what compaction test is on that material?
We did not perform any compaction test in this area. Under the building pads that we filled, yes, all those compaction tests were made. These areas right here is original material, which is good material. It was cut down, so, and generally in that condition we don't do any type test or anything. But Joel has expressed concern with that, and we might do something to satisfy him on some of these issues right here, because these pits were a little larger than I wanted them to be, and that's another reason why we decided to note it on the plat, because we didn't want anybody trying to build on top of it.
Okay. Any question for Mr. Gillen?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
since the chief's not here, they ask you, how far are you from the intersection?
Not yet. He's already saw this one at the limit.
I know, I'm picking at you.
Joel, if you will, give your report, please.
Yes, sir. It's Mr. Gillen's noted, they have an area that they are wishing to plat as a non-buildable area, and we certainly, given the actions taken on that portion of each of these lots, agree with that. We are asking that they move the building line, which is 5 feet deeper than is actually required by zoning, that they move that back up to 20 feet so that there's an additional area. Let's put it this way, if they came in and presented a building permit at 20 feet, we would certainly approve it, but it would be contrary to their covenants. And we were just asking that they, for clarity's sake and for the convenience of the property owner later on, move that back up to 20 feet. That also gives the builder an additional area that he can vary in. At this point, the buildable area is roughly 55 or so feet on each of those lots. Certainly in R5 zoning, that's enough area to build a lot. They are, as you can see on the plat, making it very obvious that there's some issue on those lots, and that is certainly necessary. There's, again, sufficient space to fit a house there without asking for a variance. There's sufficient space to allow some variation in the building type. But again, it does need to be disclosed fully. And we will watch that, and we will require further compaction tests just to make sure that these buildable areas are not impacted. So.
Is this something that somebody buying, a potential buyer is going to know?
It's going to be certainly present when somebody does the title work, and this is
maybe not until they get to closing?
that's possible, Ms. Carpenter. I will tell you that that's the reason that we requested that there be further description on the plat. What you see in front of you is the second version of this.
They cannot get through closing without knowing this.
This would be evident to their title company, to their closing attorney, anyone.
Even if it's not up until that point.
That's correct. I'm sure it would be.
Wouldn't it be in their best interest to know before?
I agree.
Excuse me, I like to hear Ms. Carpenter what she's saying. I'm very interested, but I can't hear it.
I completely agree with you. That's that is almost the basis verbatim of the discussion that Mr. Gillen and I have been having, is that a buyer of a lot thinks they're, in this case, getting 135 feet of depth. In essence, it's minus 50 or so feet. Now that property can be used for yard fences, anything like that.
Like swimming pool?
That would be a questionable
I mean,
situation at that point, because we're talking about a bar pit of roughly 8 to 10 feet, and then fill material put back in at that depth.
I don't know how it works, but I just would think I would want to know with.
Right, and I think this is like most of the lots that we have, there are things that are on the plat that never necessarily, that the buyer's aware of, whether it be an easement or anything of that nature, unless they take the time to look. I certainly agree that the professionals, the title companies, the closing attorneys, they'll all know it. But we find every day that most people don't look at their title work, their deeds, until something comes up. So.
Is that this is fill evident from visual inspection?
I would say no, and generally when you come back and fill the area that's not under the pad, it's all going to be kind of topsoil material, even if it's not been, even if it hasn't been excavated. So it's going to look similar to that, and it's not a real visual question.
Anyone else have any more questions for Mr. Duke? Mr. Nelson?
Is this the end of the property as far as it's going, or is it going further?
Mr. Gillen can probably answer that, but as you'll recall, this is the Oaks of Buena Vista. There are several more plats. This will go
Right.
much further north. I believe
The
there's
reason I was asking, isn't the rest of this mostly out there R2? R3?
To the west is R2.
R3.
Back to the east is R5.
This
it
subdivision is
5?
split between R3 and R5. So it's all single-family residential. It's just the width of the lot. You have a 60-foot minimum and a 40-foot minimum.
Okay.
Anyone else have any more questions?
And Mr. Gardner, I would request that Mr. Gillen give some explanation of whether or not this situation with the geotechnical will continue through the site. I think they've got an isolated area there that he might want to explain that to some extent.
I'll be glad to.
Unless you're ready to move on.
It's been very expensive for the developer.
Talk to your mic, if you will.
It's been very expensive for the developer. When we talk about this phase, which we platted 9 months ago, 8 or 9 months ago, the expense to dig out the road, replace it, dig out the pads, replace it, was astronomical. They don't want to do it again, I promise you. So at this point, our plans are to come back with a sketch plan that revises the remaining layout over here and these connectivity issues that we would have by avoiding basically this area through here that leads to the pond that was built in the second phase. And that's a sketch plan that we'll be getting to you within the next couple of months. But the plan is we're getting away from this material because we can't afford to play with it. It's too expensive. I mean, we don't want holes like this in the backyard. We don't want to have to build a pad this way, but in this particular case, that's what they had to do at this point in time. So we're going to do our best to avoid it 100%. Now, the material back to the west is good material. We were planning on using the material from the west to fix this particular problem that we had at this point in time. But when we got over there and we were digging down 3.5 to 4.5 feet, which to get it to the future grade, we ended up with 18 to 24 to 30 inches of topsoil, and it's because it's an old pasture that's been cultivated for years. The topsoil and everything just gets mixed up in there, so that shot the problems over here, and that's why we ended up in this particular area excavating out of the pit. But no, we're ready to get away from this. It's too expensive for anybody to play with. A little more green space and something to enjoy instead of trying to build a road and a house.
All right, Mr. McCarthy?
Who is the builder?
The actual builder in this, for instance, right here is Goodwin Building Company. They're purchasing directly from Mr. Parker and Mr. Marshall. And Mr. Parker, he was the original builder out here, but he since the economy went down, he's basically set to the side. He's not ready to stick his neck out on this economy.
All right. Any more questions? For the final plat for the resolution for the Oak or the Buena Vista number 3B, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. You're welcome. I see we have nothing on the miscellaneous side. Anyone have anything? If not, motion adjourned. Adjourn.